Welcome to Stuck Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. One of the decisions you have to make early on as a startup is where do I spend that first bit of money that I have for my business? And today I'm happy to have Suzanne Shpall here from Suzanne Shpall Consulting, and we're going to talk about that. Thanks so much for coming, Suzanne.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Mary.
Where did startups usually get that first money from their own pocketbook or from friends and family, right? And sometimes they think, oh, the first thing I have to do is make a website, or the first thing I have to do is hire an attorney. What, how do you go about making those decisions?
First of all, both of those things are important and extremely valuable to any business. And I'll dive into that more in a minute. But I think the best way to think about it when you are looking at spending your first money, first of all, I just want to say the first money is always the hardest money. It's really scary and exciting and brave, frankly, to start a business, particularly one that you self-fund. I have done this a couple times myself, and also worked with a lot of startups who are self-funded or have a tiny bit of friends and family to start. So first of all, it's scary, it's exciting, and you can grow. Congratulations on getting this far because a lot of people don't. So what I like to tell people, or the question I think it's important to ask yourself when you're looking to spend the first money is, what gets me proving and improving my core business or proving and improving my first product the fastest? So you have to really prioritize spending on things that either validate your product market fit or directly drive traction. This usually means, particularly if you're a physical product, but even if you're not, meaning like a food and beverage item or a skincare product, anything in the CPG world. I do a lot of work with companies in the CPG world. You want to invest in what's called an MVP or a minimum viable product, something that's good enough to test with real customers because ultimately your customers are what I like to call your North Star. So you always want to be thinking about them. A lot of startups blow money on fancy branding, offices, hiring too many people at once to help because you may not have all the answers right up front, and that's okay. You're not meant to. It's going to take a while. It's going to take learning, and you want to do that as smartly and strategically as possible. So start with an MVP. And then from there, you want to prioritize spending that shortens your path and your timeline to sustainable revenue, whether that's strategic marketing, maybe a key hire, or a tech improvement like a website. And you really want to test and learn to put those dollars to work. So it'll teach you what gives you the most value. And from there, you can invest more and learn from that, continue investing. And then, usually what I love about that is those initial small tests also can help facilitate faster and sometimes larger raises with institutions.
Yeah, and sometimes it makes sense if you don't have all the skills required to do the marketing or to create the MVP or something like that. It might be useful to spend some money on a startup business boot camp or a workshop of some kind for brand new businesses just to make sure you get off on the right foot. And then potentially partner up with somebody who has the skill sets in marketing or web development or whatever else. In market research, right? You got to be
Absolutely.
able to test those potential customers and ask them, is this a good idea? Are you willing to pay for it?
Absolutely. And a lot of what I do with clients is always based on market research. Because again, I like to call a consumer the North Star. Your North Star is your reason for being, your reason for making your product. So you want to know that you're reaching them and reaching them the right way. That said, I want to acknowledge that a lot of that behavioral research, a lot of market research can feel daunting and very expensive. There are some free resources that we can definitely share in the comments. One is Sparktoro. They have a really great free version where you can sort of dive into social listening and social learning, looking at different demographics to understand where your customer shows up, how they behave, and even what they're looking for through those insights. And to your point, what I would add, Mary, is there are three pillars I like to kind of discuss when thinking about how to spend that money. And I like to call it the three S's: structure, safety, and signage. The first structure, and whether you do this through a boot camp or an advisor or a consultant like myself or you, um, or even just figuring it out on your own. There are a million ways to do it. These are just three important things to keep in mind. So structure, even if you're scrappy, spending a little time and money up front to ensuring that your business, both legally and operationally, is set up to scale is really important and will help you avoid headaches and, yeah, disaster later, essentially. This means things like setting up the right business entity, basic contracts, accounting systems, and again, developing your minimum viable product. Now, if you're already confused and overwhelmed, there are resources out there like LegalZoom that can help you set up your legal entity. There are template contracts for things like safe notes, which we can get into in a minute. There are free resources out there if you want to search for them. But again, someone like you, Mary, or a consultant can definitely help you navigate.
Okay, let's talk about the other two S's.
Awesome. I wanted to give you a second. I didn't want to just, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
first of all, your reference librarian is going to be the perfect resource for finding free resources. I just
yep,
did some interviews with librarians. That's always a great place to start as your local library. But
I love that.
yeah. So let's
Absolutely.
talk about the next two S's.
Yeah. So the second is safety. This is particularly important for companies in categories like food and beverage or skincare. So a lot of CPG brands, again, a lot of my clients in the past have been CPG. Um, but honestly, really any consumer product, you need to carve out some budget for the right insurance, quality testing, and regulatory compliance. It might feel like, again, overwhelming overhead in the beginning, but it really does protect you and your customers, and it gives your brand and business credibility from day one. The third one is signage. To your point, Mary, websites are like calling cards. In today's world, our websites are our storefronts. This is one of like the most basic first phase action items I always work on with clients, because if you have a business, you need a business presence. The easiest way to do that is to build a website so anyone can find you. Even if it's really simple, make sure it's clear and that it explains what you do for your North Star, your customer, and why you're different, as well as how people can reach you.
Well, this is excellent information. Suzanne Shpall from Suzanne Shpall Consulting. And we will put contact information in the chat, and you'll be able to get more information from Suzanne. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.